All right, thank you for joining us today for this fourth installment in a series of 4 webinars on Lutheran Service Builder. And today's topic that we'll be covering is My Worship Resources and other add-ons. My Worship Resources is the area in the application where you can create and save custom elements. You can change elements that are already in one of the divine services and change an element to the way that you would like to do it, maybe with slightly different wording, or maybe you'd like to make one of the elements a responsorial. And so we'll cover some of those examples today. So first of all, let me introduce myself. I'll be your presenter today. My name's Tim Burke, and I'm a software support technician here at Concordia Technology Solutions. My contact information is there on your screen. And helping us out today as a support person is my colleague Taylor Brown, also a software support technician at Concordia. And her contact information is there as well. And she'll be manning the questions window today. So Taylor, I thank you for once again just being the support to our webinar today and helping me be able to just to focus on the presentation. I appreciate that. All right, we're in the training for Lutheran Service Builder, a total of 4 sessions. Just a quick recap. On day 1, we covered service planning and global search. Then on day 2, we went into learning about bulletins and bulletin formats, how we can export a bulletin out of the software. Day 3, yesterday, we covered presentations, in other words, PowerPoints, and presentation formats, being able to style those PowerPoint presentations with backgrounds and change the font and change the font size, things like that. And then today, we wrap it up with My Worship Resources and other add-ons. I have a little bit of housekeeping here. I plan on about 50 minutes for the presentation, and then we'll have 10 minutes for questions at the end of the session. We'll have to see the amount of questions that come through. Taylor, as I said earlier, would be addressing a lot of those questions throughout the presentation, so don't hold your question until the end. If you see something on the screen that you have a question about, go ahead and put it into the questions window in your interface and at least submit that to Taylor. And then at the end, if there are some additional questions that maybe haven't been addressed, I'll go ahead and review those in that last 10 minutes. All attendees are muted today so that I can get through the presentation without disruption. And as I mentioned earlier, just ask questions throughout. And as a reminder, a recording will be shared afterwards with those of you who attended and enrolled or registered for the different webinars. You might need to give us a day or two so that we can review those recordings and edit them if need be, but you will get a follow-up email with those links. Today's training goal: by the end of today, you will know how to create custom worship elements and import additional content into Lutheran Service Builder. Now, this in no way is an exhaustive training for today. There's just so much available in the My Worship Resources area that we couldn't cover it in a 50-minute time frame. But I hope to give you just some tips and just being able to have you watch as I do some of the common questions that we might get here in tech support. And from there, you'll be able to use those same ideas to create your own elements. And you can always reach out to us as well by phone, chat, email, and we can help you with that. All right, today's outline, we're going to talk about custom liturgies, creating a custom liturgy outside of the divine services that are available. We'll also talk about saving custom worship elements. We'll touch on Concordia Organist and the playlist feature that is available if you subscribe to the Concordia Organist subscription. And we'll talk about creative worship as another subscription that you can add to online Lutheran Service Builder as well. One and All Rejoice is the newest edition. It's the children's hymnal, and that also has a subscription. If you're interested in adding that to Lutheran Service Builder, we'll talk about that here in a bit. And then we've already touched on the Let Us Pray subscription, which is a free subscription. So we'll just touch on that once again today, since it is one of the add-ons. And then we'll talk about sharing elements. If there is an element that you create that you want to share with someone at another Lutheran church that is using Lutheran Service Builder, you're able to share those elements that maybe you've created with them, or vice versa. They'd be able to share some elements with you, and we'll go through that little option as well. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and bring up my internet browser here. And so what you should see on the screen is the calendar view where we've begun all of our webinars. We've been working with the service on Sunday, August 28th, coming up this weekend, the 12th Sunday after Pentecost. And just a real quick recap of where we've been. When you click on that service, you first get to the service plan, where you bring all of the resources that you hope to select from it. They might be used, they might not be used, but they are brought together here in this service plan view. To the left of that service plan tab is the propers. We've talked about that, and that's where you can see the readings for that particular weekend. And then from the service plan, we went over to prepare a bulletin, and we'll go back to that to some degree today. And then we talked yesterday about preparing a PowerPoint presentation and formatting there. And then today we'll touch on the prepare playlist. Let's begin today with how to create a custom liturgy. So we've already talked about when you choose an order of service here in your service plan, we've chosen Divine Service Setting 3. That is the one that is selected and the one that is highlighted here in the search panel. We put the divine services here at the top because those are most commonly used. And then there are some other orders of service that might meet your needs for other reasons. There's funeral services and marriages, and baptism, on down the line. And what we're going to talk about today is there are times when the divine service setting that you've selected, maybe your pastor, maybe if you are a pastor watching today, you would like to do the service just a little bit differently. And so you might have your secretary set up the order of service. And if they're making those same changes from week to week, that's just a lot of extra work that doesn't need to be done. What you would want to do is be able to tweak a service to the point where it has all of your changes within that order of service, and then save that liturgy as a custom order of service that you'll then use from this point forward instead of using the default Divine Service Setting 3. So let me go quickly to our calendar view, and I'm going to click in the open area of the 28th to create another service based on the holiday that weekend. And what I think I'm going to do with this is we're just going to, I'm going to call this a custom liturgy at the moment, because all we're going to do here for this little process is just create a mock-up of Divine Service Setting 3 and then tweak it the way we want and then save it as a custom order of service. So in this custom liturgy that I'm creating, it's just a temporary service. I'm going to go ahead and click the order of service, and I'm going to base it off of Divine Service Setting 3. You can choose any of the other settings as well. We've just been using Divine Service Setting 3 all week, so we'll start there. And at this point, since I'm creating a custom liturgy, I don't need to worry about the hymns being selected because that's done on a weekly basis. I don't need to worry about the readings in the lectionary, that will all be brought in based on the church holiday, and I won't worry about any additional rights. All I want to do is work with the default Divine Service Setting 3 and make some changes, and then I'm going to save that to use in the future. So for the moment, I'm going to go to Prepare Bulletin. So what we have here in the middle of the screen is a standard Divine Service Setting 3 with all of its components. If you as a church secretary or a pastor know the changes that you would want to make, maybe there's elements within this order of service that you don't do, or maybe you don't do the introit, you always do the psalm and an entrance hymn, you can make those selections here in this template that we're creating, but you don't want to fill in any of the slots with any specific hymns, and you don't want to really worry about the readings either, as I said earlier, because if we made those distinctions, then the hymn that we put here in the first slot is going to be a part of our custom order of service. So right now, we just want to use, in a way, the shell of the Divine Service Setting 3. I'm not going to make a whole lot of changes because of lack of time, but what we'll do here is, let's say, right before the readings, we always have, let's say, a children's message. So I want to go ahead and put in a caption. I'm clicking on Insert tab at the top and then choosing the tool for what type of insert I want. I want to insert a caption. We'll put it right in front of the readings here. And I'll click on that element I have inserted, and we'll just put in their children's message. And then let's see if there's any other changes that I'd like to make. Here's the psalm. Let's see, the other option is the gradual. Let's say maybe we do the gradual every week. That's one of the changes you do. And I know some of the churches, there's quite a bit of changes in rewording sometimes of different elements. We'll get into that in a little bit. But for the most part, let's say that you could also create an order of service that doesn't have communion. It's a DS3 without communion, and you could just go through here and right-click on each of these elements and delete it if it has to do with communion, and remove the heading as well, and go through the rest of the service and just pick those elements you want. That's certainly an option. We're not going to worry about any distribution hymn selections. Let's just say that I work with what I've got. All I basically did for this service is I added a children's message, and I changed the psalm to the gradual. And here's my children's message. So now I want to go back to my document tab after I made those changes. And you can see here, it currently shows that we started off with the Divine Service Setting 3. And I want to save this custom service with the children's message in it and the gradual selected, because that's what I want to use from this date going forward every week. So we can click Save, and that gives me a window where I can then name this liturgy, and we'll just call it the webinar DS3. And so I'll be able to search for it on these on this term here, on this phrase, and be able to find it then when I want to apply that to any service in the future. So I click Save, and now let's go back out. Well, let me first, before we go back out, let's talk about where that custom liturgy then appears. And that's part of the My Worship Resources here under Settings. We can go to My Worship Resources, and you can see a submenu here with a lot of different areas. Any custom liturgies you create will be listed here under My Liturgies. That's what I'll click on. And so you can see now that custom liturgy I created is listed here, webinar DS3. If I click on it here in My Worship Resources, what we kind of see is it's not going to be all of the content of the Divine Service Setting 3. It's mainly just all of the placeholders that are used in that liturgy. So you see a hymn of invocation is used. As we go down the page here, My children's message addition to that caption is listed here, and my pre-selection of the gradual is also listed here. Those things with a blue line here are a group, and those options that have like little bullet points here, circles to select from one of 3 options, that's considered an option group. So right now, this intro setup is a group here with the gray line showing Introit and Gloria Patri is together as a group, and that is one of 3 in an option group. 3 choices: the Introit, the Psalm, and the entrance hymn. And you can add those to any of your orders of service just by clicking on Insert here at the top and choosing option group or just a group. We might use that here in a little bit. I just wanted to point that out though. This is then where we can access that custom liturgy that we created. Let me go ahead and close this view. We'll go back to our calendar. Let's go to the next month of September, and let's go to Pentecost 15, the September 18th, and say that we're going to create that order of service. So we click on it, the holiday, it shows us the propers. We want to prepare this service. We can choose our hymns if we'd like in planning for that service. And now this is the part I want to show. We click on order of service, the word empty. And normally we can choose from the default divine service settings, but we can also, anything that you created customized should be at the bottom in this My Orders of Service Uncategorized. You can see the webinar DS3 that I named it, but you can also just search for it here at the top. Since I named it webinar, it should be easy to find. And there it's already filtered the list. I can now click on that, and my order of service is that custom order of service that I created. It's no longer the default DS3, but it is my webinar version of it. We can go to prepare a bulletin, and you'll see then that the 2 customizations, changes that I made of putting a children's message in front of the reading is there, and also pre-selecting the gradual instead of the psalm. And so you can go through your order of service the way that you like to see it or the way that pastor wants it, make those changes, and then save that as a custom order of service to use from this point forward. And that will ease your workload quite a bit because you don't have to make those changes. You'll still have to apply the hymns for each week in the appropriate slots, and but the readings will be pulled in from the lectionary, the appropriate reading, and Old Testament, Epistle, Gospel, those will all be pulled in normally. And so that's the way that you can create your custom order of service and save much time. Let's move on to some other options or examples here. I want to talk about other custom worship elements. Let's go back to my worship resources. Let's go back to where we were with liturgies. That's part of this list. And this is where we saw the webinar DS3. If you click on it, we see kind of the skeleton structure of that order of service. And but we can still access other areas of my worship resources here in the upper left corner from the drop-down. And that's what I want to talk about today. I know that there's a lot of people who want to know how to upload and import new hymns into your Lutheran Service Builder if you have the copyright to use those hymns. A lot of hymns might be just public domain. They're not in the Lutheran Service book. And so you want to be able just to bring them into Lutheran Service Builder and use them. We're going to talk about that then today. I've got a couple here that I've already worked with over time, but I want to add a new hymn. And I click on the add button in the lower right corner, or lower left corner, I'm sorry. And you'll notice the button to the right of that says remove this hymn. So that's how you would delete anything that you have in your list. Oh, and I did want to point out, I think somebody asked about this the other day, what does the blue dot mean in these lists within, you know, my worship resources? Any of these categories, when you're looking at the custom elements that you have, sometimes a blue dot appears. That means that there's been some editing and work done on that particular element, and it hasn't been saved yet. So we could, in fact, let me just click on In Christ Alone. It's a hymn. Let me try clicking save. Maybe there was some issue. Oh, okay, the content to have stanzas not covered by copyright. So I'm not going to worry about that right now, but that's the reason why it's showing that it is unsaved. All right, so we're going to talk about adding a hymn. I'm going to click Add a Hymn here. And what I'm going to do to save time is I've got a hymn already in Microsoft Word. I'm going to bring that over into view here. And this is a hymn from the TLH, Every Morning Mercies New. And so I'm going to save myself quite a bit of time and not show how bad I am of typing by just copying this text from here. And I'll do that with the verses here shortly as well. But I just wanted to show you what I'm doing. I'm going to click on the hymn name here on the left side, and I'm just going to paste that in, Every Morning Mercies New. So now I've got my title, and I've got some things here on the side. Let's go ahead and put the title there as well. I should have picked up, I guess, since I had clicked on the previous hymn, it was still holding that. We'll look into that. Most of these options I won't have to worry about at the moment, unless I know topics that this hymn that I'm adding might reference and be good to use. If there's any scriptures, I can add those scriptures. You just click in the cell and you begin to type associated scriptures. It might be a version of one of the other hymns in the Lutheran Service Book, or you might give it a label for a specific part of the service. So it's not only hymns that you can create, in My Worship Resources, there's a lot of these other labels, elements connected with those labels. I'm just going to go with none at the moment. We're not going to put a hymn number on this, but we could certainly add a hymn number. If you want to keep a series of numbers in the 1000s or 2000s, just to keep it outside of the Lutheran Service Book, that's fine. But what we need to do here is add now the information about the hymn. I'm going to click on Add here in the upper left corner, and you can see some options. We've got text, text with stanzas, melody, melody with stanzas, setting, setting with stanzas. The setting is if you happen to have music that is in like 4-part harmony. We're not going to use that today. I just have melody, but I do this hymn, this particular hymn does have 4 stanzas. So we'll do text with stanzas, and we'll do a tab for melody with stanzas. So we'll first start with the text. I'm going to go ahead and click that, and we want to add a stanza. Now, instead of typing the 4 stanzas out, as I mentioned earlier, I am just going to copy from my Word document all 4 stanzas and paste it in to the editing window right here, starting with verse 1. And you'll notice something that happens here that's interesting. We'll go ahead and paste as plain text. And it pasted all 4 stanzas for a moment, and then it kind of flickered, and then it knew to create a separate stanza number for each of the paragraphs because I had it separated. Let me bring that Word document over. I had it separated with a paragraph spacing here between each stanza. So if you've got something like that available, that's going to save a lot of time just copying and pasting that information in. Let's see, I might also grab the author here for the text, copy that, and we can go down here to author, paste that in, and let's see, if I'm not mistaken, that was public domain here, so I don't need this anymore. I'll move that off to the side. And we can also set the copyright here, add copyright. Click on the none, just begin to type in public, and there's our filtered list, public domain. So when you do add a hymn, you do need to account for any authors, any copyrights that might be involved here. Even if it's public domain, you wanted to put that in there, or the software will think that that you need to fill in a copyright outside of public domain. And we do want to apply this public domain to all 4 stanzas. There's this little drop down arrow here, all stanzas, kind of a question mark in a way. We want to select all stanzas. They're all public domain. So I'll go ahead and select all. We can close that and then click the save to save that. And the author didn't save there. Let's go ahead and, oh, there it is. I should have saved it earlier. Let me grab that here. The author. And we also want to select that the copyright or the author of all 4 stanzas, since it did say text on the hymn, applies to those 4, and we click save. All right, so there's some of the licensing information that I filled in, but we do have our text, and it's already separated into 4 different stanzas. So we're good there. Now what I want to do is add in the music. So that is another option in our list. We want to go to melody and add that melody. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting. I've selected a melody. Now we have a text tab and a melody tab. We've got to replace what we call the engraving. That's the image file that's used for the melody. I'll click on that. And this is where the process of uploading the engraving and what we call slicing it into slices. And you'll see what I mean here. We're going to go to the lower right corner, click upload. I've got a file of the music already, and this is in a TIFF format, TIF. Sometimes you'll get documents that are PDF, but if you can get that converted to a TIFF, you might have better results. There are some online converters that you can use to convert a PDF to a TIFF for free. So you can just Google those. But I've got the TIFF here already, and I'm going to click on that file, and we're going to click open. And it's now uploading. The button is labeled uploading in the lower right corner. And we hope that this moves along here shortly. We'll just have to wait. It is an image file. There it comes. All right, so here's the image file of that hymn. By default, it kind of comes in and uploads with a width of 17 inches. Now, I'll never need a 17-inch representation of this hymn in my bulletins or even on my PowerPoint presentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, if I'm using at the most an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper for my bulletin, I'm just going to make this 8 inches instead of 17. That increases the pixel density, and then we'll get a little bit more of a crisper image. So we'll go ahead and just move along with the 8-inch width. If you use a folded bulletin, you could, of course, even create a smaller width than 8 inches, but we'll just go with that setting today. So after we've adjusted the width to what we might use in the future, we'll then click the next button in the lower right corner. You'll see the button next to it. We can start over if this is not what we want, or if for some reason the image doesn't look good in the preview window, but this is looking great. I click next. This is where we crop the hymn down to just the music. It's saying adjust the edges around the music so there is little space as possible. And these little handles here on the line is what we would use. You don't have to work to get it exact. All you need to do is release your mouse when you're close, and it snaps right into position. So the top has been adjusted for the music. The sides are already there. And I just want to adjust the bottom. So I'm clicking on this little bold handle here. I'm dragging it up around here, and then I'm just going to release it right here, and it snaps into position. So that's looking good. I've just now cropped the image down to the music. I click next. Now it's asking to slice the music, and we need to make sure that each stanza in the music and each staff of music is appropriately showing up as a slice. So if I hover my cursor over the staff here, we can see that it looks good. The highlighted or the background of color shows up on the music well there. I can hover over verse 1, line 1. That's all looking good. 3, 4, go to the next staff of music. That's looking good. Verse or stanza 1, stanza 2, 3, 4. So a lot of times there's really not any adjusting that you need to do with the slices. If you've got a good image and it's in like that TIFF file format, you'll usually get pretty good results. Everything looks real good here as I hover over each of these areas down the page, and I feel good about that. I can then click next. So now it's going to just preview kind of what the application is thinking is music. So there, the 4 lines of music are highlighted. I can click on stanza 1, and it is the first line for each of those staffs. Stanza 2, it's going down to the second line appropriately all the way down the page. Stanza 3 and stanza 4. Everything looks good, and I really haven't done much at all in trying to get this edited. Really just snapped those lines around the music, and that's about it. Everything else is being handled pretty much automatically. Now I can click finish. And it's working. There we go. So now in my hymn, in my worship resources under my hymns, I've got the melody now brought in as an engraving, as an image file, and I've got the text. And I will need to go to the melody tab. You know, we filled in the copyright information for text, but I need to do the same for the melody tab. So now that I've got melody selected, there is a section here on the right, and this says melody. We need to come down here to the bottom, go to add copyright. Once again, let me scroll this down a little bit. Once again, here we want to just type in public domain. And save that, and then go to add author. The Greville in this case, the name used is designated for the text, so I'm not sure that they did, you know, the music as well, but we're going to do it in this case to get an author in there. But you do need to, you can just type in an author if there's not one in the drop-down list, just whoever is the author of that hymn, the text, and the music. There might be a different author of the music as well. So you'd have to enter that in this melody tab. All right, so we've entered in the information that we want. We've still got the little blue dot, which now it's just reversed. It's a white dot showing that there's changes made. We need to click save in the lower right corner. All right, I click saved, and that little dot disappears. Every Morning Mercy's New is now available for me to use as a hymn. It's in Lutheran Service Builder. Let's go to my service here where we've got a hymn of invocation. I'm going to click on that element in the service. Every morning. We'll press enter. And now you see it's actually at the top of my list here, and it does have a label for the section My Hymns, which means it's a custom hymn from my worship resources, and Every Morning Mercy's New. I can click on that, and there's my hymn. There's the melody. I've got the toolbar here for the hymn where I could just choose the text. Then it shows me the 4 stanzas that we entered in. I have a stanza button here where I could choose just stanzas 1 and 4, and it can then put that in the order of service appropriately because we sliced it all and created that hymn just that way with separate stanzas. It's got the copyright information here, Greville, Fillmore, and public domain. And that is with the stanzas that we chose here, 1 and 4 off to as a subcaption. That is the way that you enter in a new hymn. All right, I need to pick up the pace a little bit here. I know that a lot of people wanted to see uploading a hymn. That's a common request we get. Hopefully that was helpful. Certainly it's not exhaustive. There are unique things that happen with every hymn that you upload. There might be hymns or songs that have refrains or pre-choruses, choruses. How do you handle all that? And so I know that I could spend probably an hour just on uploading a custom hymn with all of those different variations. But wanted you to see it done here just with a default hymn. And then you can contact us with any of those other specific needs you have with unique hymns, songs, contemporary songs, etc. Let's go on to creating a common element. So at times we do get a call about someone wanting to turn the psalm into a responsorial type of psalm. So let's see, let's go to the intro it here. I know that the psalm option is here. And let's say that your church likes to do the psalm in a responsorial way. So what you can do then is with that element selected here in your order of service, it applies that blue background in the box around it. You can right click with your mouse. You get a context menu. You can click edit and you'll notice that it opens up this element right in my common elements of my worship resources. I don't have the menu up here, but it is, there we go. My common elements. So it is allowing me to take a psalm and I can turn this into a responsorial. Now, churches may like to turn it into a responsorial in different ways. There's a lot of variations. It could be verse by verse or half verse by half verse. I don't know. There's probably a lot of different ways, a lot of different requests that you might have. So you don't have the option for within the software to have a button that would do it automatically because there's variations. But what you can do is turn it into a responsorial here. So let's just do it maybe for ease. Let's just do it verse by verse. Now what I want to do, first of all, with the text here, I don't want to worry about assigning a responsorial designation, whether it's pastor or congregation yet. What I want to do is separate the different responses, I guess, the different verses for who's going to say what. So in this case, I'm going to put my cursor at the end of verse 1 and press the enter key to put like a paragraph separation. I'll do that with verse 2, with verse 3, and I'll be able to clean this up later. But it's important that you separate with a paragraph spacing these different verses. Now we can come back around and be able to just select this portion, and let's say we're going to start out with pastor saying that. Or actually, praise the Lord, let's maybe start it off with a congregation in that case. So now we have the C, and we've got, it automatically will bold the type for you if it's congregation. Then we'll highlight the next verse. Pastor, we'll highlight the next verse, choose congregation, we'll highlight, go down, and you can see there's other options here, leader, assistant, cantor, lector, left side, right side of the church, men, women, response, people, versicle, but the more common ones are here at the top. We'll make that pastor. Let's see, pastor, and I've got congregation. Pastor, and then the final one, congregation. So now I've got it, the responses set up, and now I'd want to clean it up a little bit. If I click my cursor here, you'll see extra spacing. I can just delete those. And attempt to clean that up so it's more verse by verse here. I'm just clicking my cursor at the top so that I can remove some of that additional spacing. There might be some additional things that we can do. Let's see, well that, I think there was more of a space in that one, but you get the idea. We maybe have to work with this just a little bit more, but now we've turned this psalm into a responsorial. I can click save. Will take us out of my common elements here in my worship resources. Now let's close it with the X, and it should return us back to our service with that psalm then in a responsorial way. I could do a little more cleanup, I'm sure, in there working with that. But you could also do that in Microsoft Word. But I wanted you to see just how that would be done and get you started there. You'll have to experiment with it. I don't have time to get, it's already 10:40. We got 20 minutes left here of the webinar, so I want to keep on moving. But you get the idea. The important thing just to remember that we get the calls about is making sure that that paragraph separation is there. Let's go back to the edit window, that paragraph separation is there before you start assigning the responsorials. That will take care of a lot of the support calls we get. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is, let's talk about creating a template that surrounds other elements. Let's go to a reading here in the service. And you'll notice here that the Old Testament reading, I'll click on it here to bring focus to that element, is that the content of the reading is listed here, and then there is a response. And that response is really just a template. If we see our drop-down menu up here, the standard response brings in the content from the lectionary, and then it adds A and C. This is the word of the Lord. Congregation response, thanks be to God. So that's how this is getting formatted. And you can create your own templates if you like to use some different wording. Let's go to my worship resources. Let's go to the templates. And we've got an Old Testament response, a Gloria Patri, and you'll start to see some familiar, options here. You go down to the lower left to add a template. We've now got a template here, and we'll call this the webinar response. And I've already got some type that I'll just bring over from my text file here so I don't have to type that all in and waste time. And I'm coming over here to the editor, and we're going to paste it in here. So what this would look like basically is this. If I was to type it out, there are some codes in here that start with the hashtag or the pound. The content will bring in, let me highlight it here for you. The content will bring in the reading from the lectionary. You'll also notice some other ones up here. Book, pound, book, pound. That will bring in the book that the reading is based on. And then pound, chapter, ordinal, pound will bring in a certain wording of the chapter. And then just for variation, I went ahead and put the other option here of pound, cardinal, pound. So let me real quick bring up a slide for that. These are your options when you're creating templates. The content option displays the primary content of the element that the template is applied to. So in this case, we're doing it for a reading. The book will display the book for the scripture reading that from the lectionary. The chapter, cardinal option spells out the chapter number as a 1, 2, and 3. And if you choose the other option here, chapter ordinal number, that will spell out the chapter numbers as 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So based on the way that you are creating your template, you might decide to use the 1, 2, 3, or the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. So let's show how that applies here, because since I created this webinar response here for us, I use both methods. And now obviously you wouldn't say today's scripture reading is from the book of whatever it is, the chapter, whatever that is. Or I suppose we could say the book of Samuel chapter 3. The content is brought in, and then this is the way of the Lord. What we need to do here is once again separate that. The pastor maybe would say that, the congregation would respond with thanks be to God, and this top one here would also be spoken by the pastor. So we'll say that. Let me clean this up, click above the line there, bring that all into one line. Let me put a little space between the content. So this might be my template for readings. I'm going to go ahead and click save. The blue or the white dot in this case, since it's highlighted, but it would be blue if you go to something else. There's a blue dot there that shows that there's content that's unsaved. So I'll click save. Now the blue dot disappears and my webinar response will be in my template drop down. So here's my Old Testament reading that we still got selected. I can now go to the response drop down menu. And if we scroll through the list here, we should see a webinar response from the one I created. Let me refresh the screen here so that we get a new listing. Once again, clicking on Old Testament, standard response, Old Testament response, daily office with introduction. These are all default that are there. That's one that I created, Gloria Patri. Here we go, my webinar response that I just created while with you today. Let's go ahead and apply that template. And you'll see now the Old Testament reading says, today's scripture reading is from the book of Amos, the 8th chapter. Or I suppose we could say from the book of Amos, chapter 8. And you can see that it's pulling in the scripture from the lectionary. It's got the content here because we put pound content pound. And it has the response at the end because we also listed that as part of our template. There is a sentence or the introduction said by the pastor. The pastor at the end of the content then says, this is the way of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Now that might not be exactly how you would do it. I just did this, for the purpose of the webinar. So you could see the differences between that chapter cardinal number and the chapter or ordinal number, depending on how you've got that worded. All right, so that's a template. All right, let's talk about Concordia Organist. Boy, this is going longer than I expected. So Concordia Organist, that is a subscription. Let's see. That is an additional subscription that if you don't have a regular organist there at your church, but you do want the organ accompaniment, then that is an option there. Let's go to, well, if you are subscribed, if you want to subscribe to Concordia Organist, you'll need to talk with your salesman. And that's what will then activate it here. That salesman will, flip the switch and you'll then have it available here in Lutheran Service Builder under Prepare Playlist. Now, the past couple days, we've gone from service plan to bulletin and then to presentation. And all of those selections that we made in the bulletin also transferred over to presentation. And anything we change in those two will also transfer over to the playlist. So you'll see some commonality here. When I click on Prepare a Playlist, we see a new view. And once again, similar to the presentation view, we've got a scroll bar of the order of service on the left side. You'll notice that we don't have, I added that custom hymn today. We don't have organ accompaniment for that, obviously. So that option is grayed out for the first hymn. But as we go down the row here, we will see parts of the liturgy. They'll be in bold. If they're available with accompaniment, we can click on the play button. Let's have the volume turned up here. You can get an idea of what that sounds like, the Holy Gospel. Hopefully I'm not blaring you out there. Let's go to, let's click on the hymn here, the first hymn, and let's change that. And you can do this in this playlist view. I don't want to go, I could, you would normally do it in Prepare Bulletin and it would just kind of run through your presentation and your playlist as well. I need to make just a quick selection here. I'm going to click on one of the hymns here off to the side, and we would have the same stanza selection if you had already made it in the bulletin view. Then it would also show here with just stanzas 1 and 4 as well. But then you'd have an option here to listen to the organ. These are all recordings done on an actual organ. And if you choose stanzas just 1 and 4, it's going to most likely play an intro and then stanza 1 and 4. That's all it will play. For these liturgy elements, it will play accordingly. You might have to get the pacing down or listen to it just to see how much time is spent on the intro of some of these. But I wanted to see the different liturgy elements that are available with organ accompaniment. And what we'll do here then, I just added one hymn and we've got the liturgy. You can add other hymns as you're experimenting with this. Just click on an element here, especially where there is a hymn placeholder like hymn of the day. You could click on that. Normally it already would be selected, like I said, from your bulletin, but I'll go ahead and put that here as well. But once we've got that all in place, some of the other options that you have besides choosing a stanza, you can choose whether you want to include an element of the liturgy or a hymn. I mean, maybe you don't do the Kyrie, so you could click on the Kyrie and click the include off, and it would then gray that option and not include it. Let's see if that worked that way. Include or not included. Yeah, it takes the bold type style off of the name. So in this case, as we export our playlist, it would not include the Kyrie. And you can, again, move things, different elements in different positions in your order of service. But let's go ahead and go back to our document tab where we have the export button. And you'll notice that the export option here under playlist is a zip compressed MP3 file. I'm going to click on that. And right now it's pulling together all of those different audio files from our server. We just have to wait for it to appear. It does take a little time to accumulate those files and put them all together in one zipped folder. But I should mention this option is available as a subscription for $250 a year. So, if you don't have an organist, you'd be able to have organ accompaniment week after week. If you do have an organist, but possibly they want to go on vacation or they're out some of the weeks, it still might be worthwhile. I don't know how much you might pay an organist a temporary organist to come in and fill in, if that would be $250 in a year or not, but this is certainly an option. All right, so what appeared here in my on my computer is the zipped file. I'm going to go ahead and just save that to my desktop here. And we're going to click on that in the lower left corner. I'll bring that over here. So this is what the file looks like with all of the elements that have audio with it. What we need to do, since it's a zip file, and what zip means is that it's compressed so that it transfers over the internet a little bit faster as a compressed file, we first need to extract these MP3 files. So we'll click on Extract All. Then this window appears. Select a destination. I just want it on my desktop as well. I'll show the extracted files when it's done. There we go. So these are the audio files then for your service in the order that they appear. The hymn 851 that we selected, and then the different parts of the liturgy. So what I might do then is you could burn this to a CD if you need that. You'd have to be using something like a Microsoft Media Player to do that. But once you have the files here on your computer, I'll go ahead and just kind of select all of the files here and right click and say play this with my or add it to my media player list. I think I'll do that. So then my my media player shows up here, and I would then be able to, if you have a sound person on your PA system that can then play the organ music, you would then have all of these individual audio files to be able to play. Let's see, let me just click on one of these to show. I'm just going to double click on one in the list, and this is that hymn, and this is the intro. And showing that it would take 2 minutes and 24 seconds to sing through the stanzas. I think we had maybe selected stanzas 1 and 4. There's the intro. And now the hymn begins with stanza 1. So you get the idea. The dynamics are there from the recorded organ, so that you pretty much know where to begin singing. And then I'll double click on one of the liturgy elements. The Gloria in Excelsis is 1 minute 44 seconds long, as we see here in the media player. So you might have to have somebody on your soundboard there that's familiar with where these different parts of the liturgy appear. But that is then a way that you can get organ accompaniment in with your Lutheran Service Builder by getting the subscription for Concordia Organist. Let me go ahead and close these files. I do want to talk about a couple other things. We're going to go a little over today. I can tell already we're just at about the top of the hour. I'm finishing up though. I want to talk about a couple of the other add-ons. Creative worship, we use that a little bit. Once again, creative worship is an additional subscription. And in this case, it is an add-on. So we'd come to the gear, click on account settings. And if you have subscribed to the service with your salesman already, then the option here of adding that subscription would appear on this list. So I wanted to, you may not see this in your account because you haven't subscribed to Creative Worship yet. But I can click on this from the drop-down, and it now has activated the subscription in my Lutheran Service Builder application, and I can choose whether to include items from Creative Worship in my search panel or not. I'll go ahead and leave it checked to include those. We'll go ahead and save that change. Let's go to the calendar view. Let's go to the service for this coming Sunday, the 28th, which is, since I'm in September, let me go back a month here just to keep it in view appropriately. I'm going to click on a space here. We'll go ahead and call this Creative Worship. And when I click on Order of Service in this case, you'll now see some additional options. Normally the Divine Services are here, but if you've got the Creative Worship subscription, those are now going to appear at the top. So we could click on Creative Worship, and what Creative Worship is actually a subscription for a variety of liturgies that you can use throughout the year. For every week, there is a unique service plan for Creative Worship, and the hymn selections are already made. They already appear in the order of service. It's like it's ready right out of the box kind of a thing. So let's take a look at one of those. I'm just going to click on Series C, Quarter 3. Let's go to the Bulletin. And this is the way then a Creative Worship service will look like. It begins with As We Gather. You've got an option here between a couple different selections. We've got a pre-selected hymn, 902. If you spend time kind of looking through this dropdown, you'd probably notice some of the differences, especially if you're a pastor or secretary. But I'm just gonna, some of the things are still the same. But as you saw yesterday in our presentation webinar and presentation formats, that creative worship also offers a lot of backgrounds. And so let me quickly just go to another website here. Creative worship. There's two ways that you can get creative worship. The online subscription is what interfaces with Lutheran Service Builder Online. That's $65 per quarter, or you might look at it, all 4 quarters would be $260 a year, or if you look at it from a week, it's $5 a week, and it will give you, everything that the creative worship subscription has, which I'll show you here in a minute. The other option is just an individual edition by quarter, and that is $81.25. That one is not associated with online Lutheran Service Builder, so you would not see the options when we go to the service plan here that we currently see in the order of service. We would not see any of those if you get the individual quarter option that I was showing you here on the left. The online subscription is here. Let me show you what that looks like. I'm in my CPH account right now. I'm going to go to our account. I'm going to go to digital content here in my account. And there we go. We've got a lot of stuff in here. Apologize, but we'll get down to the area here where creative worship exists in my digital area, where right now we're in quarter 3. I can view quarter 3. And so this is a full quarter's worth of services. You can see that there's one for June 12th, June 19th. Each of them has a different theme, a different image to go along with it. Yesterday in our presentation, let me get down to August 28th. Here is the service for this coming Sunday. When I choose that service in my creative worship subscription, I then see the backgrounds that we used yesterday that you can make use of. I've got the service here in Word doc format, in RTF format, or a PDF. I mean, just clicking on one of these, let's go just take a look at what that looks like. It's the same thing we saw a moment ago, for the most part, in Lutheran Service Builder, the invocation, the opening sentences, confession, and absolution. So it's a whole service that you can make use of if you're just looking for some variety outside of the divine service settings. And besides that, they also include in your subscription at $5 a week, service music suggestions. You've got an accompaniment PDF. You've got an Alleluia and verse. There is a preview of what that sounds like. And then the music is right here for your organist. And so that comes on, week by week as well. There's also I think a special piece of music here, or this is an organ prelude, I believe. And so, your organist might be interested in having a already selected prelude to use, and the PDF includes that music as well for the organist. And then there's even a choir selection here. Again, a PDF with that choir music, and then the preview of what that will sound like. It's just a preview. It's only 44 seconds long. But that kind of gives you an idea of what creative worship has to offer. Let's go ahead and close some of these things down. And let's see, what else? I want to show you also one of the other subscriptions we have is the new One and All Rejoice Hymnal. That is this right here, the One and All Rejoice Children's Hymnal. It has, I think, somewhere around 200 or more hymns. They are hymns for this children's hymnal. Let's go to the product page here. The One and All Rejoice subscription that then interfaces with Lutheran Service Builder. is $60 per year. I mean, 52 weeks in a year, that's just a little over $1 a week. Maybe you even have a family that would gift the subscription to the church, but you would have the addition of that subscription. The hymnal itself that I was holding up here a moment ago, the hardback, is shown here at $15, the accompanying book for $40. But what that will bring you here in Lutheran Service Builder, let's go ahead and add the subscription and include it in the search. Save. Now, when I click in the order of service, we'll have, now, unlike creative worship, which is put at the top, the orders of service from One and All Rejoice, since it's a children's hymnal, are put in their own section here at the bottom. You might be able to read that. It says One and All Rejoice, and there are liturgies that you can use. And a lot of the One and All Rejoice would be used in the classroom. It could be used for children's chapel. And you'd have these additional liturgies. So let's just click on the Liturgy of Praise as my liturgy, my order of service in this case. We'll go to Prepare a Bulletin, and we should see, let's see, I might have to make that selection here as well. We did the Liturgy of Praise, changing the order of service. Yes, continue. There we go. So here's the liturgy from One and All Rejoice. And this would be more geared, towards children, the classroom, chapel, those types of things. The hymns are already selected, real similar to Christian worship or creative worship, but you can always replace those with your own selections. Let's go back to the service plan here, because there are some additional options here with the One and All Rejoice hymnal. When you click on Add Hymns, this gives you the additional hymns that are listed in creative worship now at the top. We have a section again for creative worship. I think there were 3 orders of service for next weekend that are possible from creative worship if you have that subscription. Then the hymn search panel looks the way that you're used to it, having the hymn of the day, hymns for readings. And if you then go to the bottom and select the link to browse all hymns, what you'll do then is you'll be able to find the One and All Rejoice once again, kind of here at the bottom. Let me scroll up a little bit here to show where those hymns begin. There we go. The section here for One and All Rejoice. It's got a number of psalms, a handful of psalms that are available with a psalm tone. They've got songs for Advent, Christmas, Epiphany, and all of those are in this One and All Rejoice hymnal. Now there is I think about a third crossover of hymns that are drawn in from the Lutheran Service Book in that hymnal as well, but the other 2/3 are unique to that hymnal. So I did want to make sure that you were aware of that subscription. That is, like I said, $60 a year, roughly a little over $1 a week, if you look at it that way. Let's also take a look at well, I've already shared the part about the Let Us Pray files. Those are the free, that's a free subscription right here, Let Us Pray. And that really any of you would be able to access if you go to account settings and your content subscriptions. This is a free subscription, and it brings in the prayer of the church that the LCMS puts out on a weekly basis. And you can choose to include that automatically or include that in a search as well. All right, we've gone 10 minutes over the hour. We better cut it off here and go to our slide presentations and take a look at any questions that might have come up. It looks like there's a long list of questions here. We're going to have to probably follow up with you on some of these. And also remember, as I mentioned yesterday as well, a lot of these questions are unique to your needs and would be better answered through a support call. I could spend probably an hour and a half on all of these questions that have come through, and they're so specific. There might be some in there that are general that would benefit answering here for the whole group, but there's a lot that are specific. Let me go ahead and get back to our slides here. So just as a recap, the Concordia Organist is $250 per year, regardless of your church size. So if you need organ accompaniment and you've got a sound person that can click on those audio files, it is just a real nice subscription to have and to meet those kinds of needs. The Creative Worship is a subscription giving you a variety of liturgies on a weekly basis with themes and images and backgrounds for your PowerPoint presentations, the prelude, the choir selection, just a lot of content for $65 a quarter. So 4 times a year. You would want to get the online subscription. Like I said, that works out to be about $5 a week. And then finally, the One and All Rejoice Children's Hymnal. That's an add-on subscription of $60 per year, and we just went over that. All right, 4 ways to get in touch with us in software support. Online Help Center. You can use the in-app chat, which we've talked about in past webinars as well. That's available Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 5. That's that little eye icon in the lower right corner in your application. And if we have a technician in the channel, you'll see the text there in the little window that says Start a Chat. And if you're comfortable with using that, I would recommend using that. You'll end up most likely getting served quicker than you would in some cases on the phone. We have a lot of phone calls coming in throughout the day, and we'll get to you on the phone as quickly as we can, but sometimes chat is a good option. The phone number is 800-346-6120, Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 5, once again. And if it's evening hours or the weekend that you're working on something and you have a question, please use our email address as well and send us that question, and we'll follow up with you. All right, questions and answers. I'll look at some today if there is an interesting question to put out there, but I know that we're already an hour and 13 minutes into the webinar. I apologize for going over here. There was a lot of content to cover, and so you're more than welcome to leave the webinar right now, and some of the questions and answers may be on the video if you want to review that at a later date. But go ahead and put any questions you have in the GoToWebinar questions window. We like to even get the question if I don't get to the answer. We like to have record of the question so that we know other content that we might need to cover in future webinars. So put that in there. Remember, a recording will be emailed within 48 hours. And if you are watching this recording at a later date, then just email your question into support@cts.cph.org. All right. Yeah, this scroll list is a long one. Yeah, the custom part of Lutheran Service Builder definitely will bring in the questions. Let me go up a little ways and see some of the things that Taylor might have covered already. Yeah, that's already answered. That's answered. Good. Thank you, Taylor, once again for answering questions and trying to keep up with the flow of questions. I know I'm seeing timestamps when questions came in. Sometimes there's like 3 or 4 questions coming in at that moment, in that minute, all at the same time. So I know it's hard to keep up with. Yeah, Thomas says, if you are creating a hymn whose tune is in LSB, is there a way to specify the tune name rather than creating and uploading a TIFF file? There is a way to, let's go back, because that was one thing that I didn't cover. It's the detailed information. Let's go to, let's see, my worship resources, my hymns. And we'll go to that hymn that I entered in every morning, Mercy's New. There is, let's see, where is that? Oh, maybe it's in the melody tab, possibly. Here, when you click on the melody tab and the section opens up on the right for melody, there is a slot here for tune. And so if you're an organist, you probably recognize some of these tune names. You can associate a tune with it, but to answer your question, you'll still have to upload the engraving, because the engraving, if you have it, will associate all of the stanza text with the notes above it. And there's no way for us to be able to set up the myriad of text with a melody that you're just choosing, out of Lutheran Service Builder. Each of those has to be an engraving all of its own to make sure the words and the syllables are matched underneath each individual note, and that takes a person to be able to do that, because sometimes there's just choices that have to be made by a person getting involved in it. So yeah, that should answer your question there. Yeah, Christopher asked, there were missing staff lines in the second line. Is that okay? No, that's not okay. I would contact technical support. I know that I occasionally get a call about that, and I'm trying to remember. I can't recall what the answer is, but if you call into the support line, I'm sure we can do a little research and find out ways to try to get those all of the staff lines in on your engraving, on your melody representation here. Yeah, Christopher, I'm guessing that one could scan a public domain hymn tune from a hymnal and edit the text to the newly written one. You wouldn't be able to edit the text because the image file, the engraving, is like a picture. And so, if you have a picture of your house, you can't edit a part of that picture per se, and make sure that things are lined up. It's all one picture for the most part, or in a lot of cases, it's the staff line and the 4 lines of stanzas here that are one picture, and you can't separate those. You can't edit right within a picture file. But you could, let's see, where was that question here? But you could scan a hymn in. You had asked about that. And the only problem with scanning is that sometimes, let me just open up my Lutheran Service book, and let's say you had one of the other hymnals. Boy, I don't know what this, let me get webcam up here. So a lot of times when you put it on a scanner, you might not get it exactly right. It might be slightly tilted, and then the slicing application in part of the application won't work if your staff lines are crooked on the piece of paper. So it is best, if you can get your copy or your scan to be perfectly horizontal and all lines, aren't tilted one way or the other, you might be able to get it done, but it is difficult, and that's where an actual file of the hymn, whether it's in PDF form and you convert it to TIFF, those are all possibilities. Yeah, some good questions here. If we had more time, I'd be able to do some of those. I know people were asking for, can Tim demonstrate this and that? And I just don't have the time anymore. But I would definitely call in. We can always remotely connect to your computer and help you with some of that, some of those questions you have, and we can share the same screen and you can see it done on your computer. Those are options that we have as support techs. 11:20. Yeah, Robert asked about applying the Gloria Patri, I think it was, to a responsive psalm. I'd like to show you that. It would take just a little time, but once again, you can give us a call and we'll go over that with you and help you through it, demonstrate it, and you'll get the feel for it and maybe be able to do some additional responses then from here going forward. Yeah, some good comments here that we'll be able to enter in as feedback. Yeah, one of the questions asked here by Bud is, can I include some content in a service such that I can have two versions of the bulletin, one version for the congregation and one version for the pastors with additional elements only for the pastor? Certainly, and that is something that is possible. What you can do then, Bud, is that would all be involved in preparing a bulletin, but what you could do is just create another order of service. We could call this pastor's version, plan this service, and you then would be able to add the additional content to your version. It shows up then, or I should say pastor's version. I don't know if Bud is a pastor or not. But then every Sunday you might have a pastor's version of the service and a congregational version of the service. And that is certainly possible. In fact, if we did the 12th Sunday after Pentecost here, and you had your service planned out, maybe the secretary got involved and did the order of service the way you'd like to get it, you can make a copy of that service for August 28th there, and let's call this pastor's version, and I'll put 2 in parentheses just so we can see it on the calendar that way. So here we're copying the order of service that you've already worked on for the congregation. And that way, a lot of your work will already be done there. You'll see here on the column on the left that I have the pastor's version and pastor's version 2, which is a copy. And if we went to the calendar view, we would also see those versions here as well. And so, yeah, you could easily make an additional bulletin. You would then use, the pastor's version with the added content when you're in there to prepare the bulletin and export that out for the pastor's, pastor's viewing only. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, I think, let's see, that individual left already. Yeah, let me point this out for those of you who are still remaining. And boy, I thank you for still tuning in here if you're there. But in the Concordia playlist view, I think someone was asking here if you could play your service right from the Lutheran Service Builder application. And this is not designed to be your way of playing the songs on a Sunday morning. This is only a way to create the playlist and then export it out as zip files, for then a media player to play. So we would not recommend it. There are, issues then that come up with playing it right out of here. It just doesn't work well. So I wanted just to point that out since somebody had asked. All right. It's 11:25. I better close up today's webinar. Certainly, if you've got a question that hasn't been answered either by Taylor or myself here at the tail end, you can get in touch with us by phone or chat, and we'll also see if, I'm not sure if we follow up on some of those, depending on what the question that is asked. I can kind of review them as well, and maybe we'll get a support ticket created or follow up with you on how to address some of those things. So, all right, anyway, let's go ahead and just put up that last slide here. I want to thank you for watching. I apologize for going over. It's a lot of content, but I so much appreciate your participation in the webinars this week. Thank you for your time. It means a lot to us. And once again, reach out to us with any questions or any feedback that you have on the application, things you'd like to see added maybe at some point in the future. We'll take all of that feedback as well. So just let us know. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day.